Okay, this video, as long as I can stay on topic, it's a big topic though. So even though it might feel like I'm veering off topic, I'm really not. I'll come back. But the picture you saw on this video before you tapped onto it, is what this video is completely about. So if you really didn't concentrate on that picture, you need to go look at it. And I will explain. Just to describe it, you want to make sure you're looking at the right picture. It's three circles, three worlds. How's that? Instead of three circles, it's three worlds. And the first world is mystical, the mystical world. Then the second is spiritual, the spiritual world. And then the third world is the scientific world. And where the mystical, spiritual, and scientific world meet is me in the middle, where all the circles collide. Uh, each aspect of each world is included in what is me. Now, it's also included in you. I mean, you and me aren't any different, but we are different, is why I'm explaining this to you, and you're not explaining it to me, and that's the difference. But the word me is there, and it could be you instead of me, and there'd be no difference except that. Now, it also says reality. This is reality. This is your reality. This is my reality. Now, you've been taught through the years and through brainwashing and indoctrinations and manipulations that you've gone through from school, church, um, TV, movies, books. Uh, you've been taught how to think of these three worlds, each separate, not combined. And they combine them a little bit, but more in a denial aspect than a acceptance aspect. Whereas like spiritual denies the power of scientific, scientific denies the power of spiritual, and mystical has its own denials. And they're not married. They're not what this diagram is showing. Uh, where they're conjoined. They're one. They're separate, but they're one. They're part of a whole, and that whole is me or you. Now, this whole is what I call reality. Now, it's not so much a physical reality. That's why you don't see a physical world there. Uh, because spiritual is not physical, mystical is not physical, scientific is not necessarily physical. It's scientific explains the physical, um, interprets or defines the physical, like how we use a stopwatch to judge how fast a person runs or how fast a car goes. Uh, that's science defining physical. Well, spiritual defines physical. Why you have morals, why you believe in good and bad and God and devil and things like that, and Jesus and other aspects of spiritual. Um, the Quran, the Hindu, the Buddha, it's all spiritual. It's just all that is spiritual, and none of it's physical. None of it's physical. Um, I mean, Jesus was physical, but in the sense that we think of Jesus. It's more his teachings, the teachings of Jesus, the teachings of the Bible, and not the physical people that were in the Bible, depicted in the Bible. This is a mystical, you know, Zeus is mystical. The Greek gods is mystical. Helen and Troy is mystical. Um, the Odyssey is mystical. The Cyclops is mystical, but it's not physical. You know, 'cause it's fantasy. It's not. There is no such thing as a Cyclops. You know, but in the mystical world there is. You know, and you could say that Noah's Ark never happened in real life in the physical world, but in a biblical story it did, and it had value as a biblical story. You know, showing doing something when everything in the world was telling Noah not to build the ark, and that he was crazy for thinking that he needed to build the ark. And in the end, when it started raining, everybody wanted a seat on the ark. And, you know, it's just, and that, whether that physically happened or not, doesn't matter because I think it's unrealistic to think that it did physically happen. And of course, that's what makes it spiritual because it's so unbelievable. Uh, but again, it's not physical, it's a spiritual story. Noah is a spiritual character. His challenges and what he went through were spiritual. You know, he did it because God told him to build the ark. You know, and that's what makes it spiritual. You know, and science, you know, tries to explain life through like what Einstein capitalized on scientific. You know, Tesla capitalized on scientific. Um, even Freud capitalized on scientific, and Jung capitalized on scientific. You know, and they really, I think, for the most part, disregarded spiritual and mystical. I don't think it came into much of their calculations as far as seeing it as a real part of their equation, like it is in this diagram. This diagram incorporates all three worlds, which makes up me, and it's my reality, which I know I'm explaining this video now, but it's your reality too, and the me is you, and you need to realize that, you know, because if you deny mystical characteristics of your personality, of who you are, and all that, and your life and your reality, and how much mystical makes up your reality, and how much spiritual makes up your reality. I mean, I know all of you haven't, but a lot of you go to church, and it's spiritual when you go to church. That's spiritual, and I know a lot of you aren't scientists, but you use the creations of science every day. If you watch TV, if you're watching this video, it's the culmination of science. So it's, it's very hard to take any of these worlds out of the picture, you know, and out of reality, because this is what your reality is. And again, it's not physical. It's all between, this whole diagram is between your ears. And it's in your heart, you know, but it's part of your soul, you know, and you could be missing a leg, you could be autistic, you could be blind, you could be deaf, and these three worlds are still a part of your life. Uh, so as long as you're breathing, the me part is you. So, uh, and I think uh, it's hard to argue my point. It's hard to argue what I'm putting forth here. I don't think you can. Uh, now the three little circles that are around me, uh, well, not circles, but whatever they are, triangles, I guess you would say. Uh, they're more or less where you live. Like you might put you where scientific and spiritual meet, but you would exclude mystical, thinking mystical has nothing to do with your life. But it does. It has a lot to do with your life. Mystical is a big part of the Greeks and the Greek society, the Greek civilization, and the creation of democracy. Um, Apollo, all the Greek gods, Aphrodite, uh, you know, they all played a role in creating what we call reality today. And you cannot take one of these circles out and consider what you're left behind with, as being reality. It's not complete. It might be your reality, but it's not a complete reality. The complete reality is the three worlds combined in the way they are here. So you can't take one out. You just can't. It's like if you with the Olympic rings. If you took one of those rings out, it wouldn't be the Olympic rings anymore. So it is what it is, and that's what this is. It is what it is. You can fight it, you can argue it, you can deny it, but in the end, this is reality. This is your reality, and I think if you want to balance life, you have to balance these worlds in your life. Uh, and like I said before, a lot of scientific people want to say spiritual and mystical doesn't exist. And a lot of spiritual people want to say scientific and mystical doesn't exist. And you know where I'm going here. So, what I'm saying is all three exist, and all three make up who you are. Now, within spiritual, you have Jewish, Catholic, Hindu, all and religions I don't even know the names to because they're not mainstream religions, like a Jehovah Witness or something. And within those people, like a Jehovah Witness, the mystical part and the scientific part don't play as significant a role as the spiritual part. Because like I know with Jehovah Witness, they don't allow a lot of medical procedures to be done on them, like blood transfusions and such. And that's denying the scientific world. That's rejecting the scientific world. Yeah. And I don't know. I'm not Jehovah's Witness, so I don't know exactly, but I don't assume they play much of a role with the mystical either. It's very spiritual. Jehovah is the name of God. You know, and God is me. I'm God. That's me. God. I could replace that me with God, and God is you. Believe it or not. So this is where it's going, and I think you see where it's going. You know. Now, just as wrong as it is for the Jehovah's Witness to live in spiritual, the Jews live in spiritual, the Catholics, the Protestants, the Buddhists, they all live in spiritual. But you have to include scientific and mystical to be healthy. And, you know, It's just to deny these other worlds is to deny yourself. Just like the Jehovah Witness denies the ability to live because they won't allow a blood transfusion when they need one because of their spiritual beliefs. So they rather die and deny science than violate their spiritual law. And I'm sure you can take that kind of metaphor and go crazy with it with other religions and what they don't allow. You know, uh, the Jews, you have to be buried within 24 hours. That's spiritual law. That's spiritual, not scientific. I mean, nothing's going to happen to your body after 24 hours. It's not going to happen anyway. And mystical, of course, why we're buried the way we are, 6 feet under, is mystical. So, it's all encompassing. It's all eclipsing. It eclipses our whole life, our whole existence, our whole reality. Our law system is based on spiritual, mystical, and science. Um, what's a sin and what's a crime, and what is the power of the court. It's all mystical, it's all spiritual, it's all scientific. So you can't escape reality. And that's what a lot of these groups try to do. And they do it on purpose. They do it to gain control over their flock. The Jews, the Jehovah's Witness, they make these crazy rules to control the people that are part of their group. And in doing so, they deny these other worlds. Because these other worlds make it harder to control the individual, the me, the you, the God. You know, uh, if Jehovah's Witness allowed people to get blood transfusions, then they feel like they're undercutting their spiritual belief. Oh, we don't believe as much as we say we do because we're allowing science to enter. And I know mystical is hard because mystical is more ancient, but a lot of today is a product of yesterday. And that's how mystical really plays a role in our lives. Uh, our love life, our financial life, our philosophical, the way we practice philosophy. The philosophy itself is mystical, built on mystical. So it's the foundation. It was probably, I would say, the first world, then came spiritual, and now we have scientific. So you need to look at it that way as well. So, and that's why you can't do without one or the other. It's like the United States trying to deny the Constitution exists. The Constitution is the whole United States. If without the Constitution you don't have the United States. Well, without Zeus, you don't have spiritual. And without spiritual, you don't have science. Jesus walked on water. Well, what does science want to do? Prove or disprove it? Prove it existed, prove he did it. They can't prove he did it, but you can believe they tried. So, and mystical created Jesus, being that he was God's son, and in mystical, with Apollo and being Zeus's son, and stuff like that. So it's just a bridge that branched these two worlds together, and uh, and of course spiritual branch scientific in as well. But even though a lot of the spiritual deny science and deny mystical, but just because you deny an alcoholic denies he's an alcoholic too, but we all know that motherfucker's an alcoholic. He can deny it all he wants. He's an alcoholic. So the spirituals can deny the science and the mystical. Their existence is because of the mystical and the science. So I just I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I think I made my case. Now I'll probably do future videos on this diagram. I don't think I'll use it on the video feed that it's the picture you see for the video because this was the only time you're going to see this diagram on this video on my channel. And you know, it's just I don't know. It's so simple, but it's so powerful. Just like all of them are so simple. Mystical is simple. Spiritual is simple. Science is simple. But at the same time, they're very complicated. Each one of them is very complicated, very intricate. Very intricate. You can spend the whole lifetime in the spiritual world. You can spend the whole lifetime in the mystical world. You can spend the whole lifetime in the science world. But your reality is with all three of them at the same time. And that's why you're in that spot where it says me. And it's balanced, you know. I mean, you can see with this diagram, it's very balanced, you know. Not one is. I mean, I drew the circles with my Heppel pen and all that. I made this diagram, so you know, it might not be perfect circles, but it's think of it as it is because it's balanced, you know. And it looks like an atom. And what is atoms but the creation of life? And without atoms, uh, the sun doesn't exist. And this is very important, and you need to think of and look at it exactly that way.